You're listening to the Drummer Daily Podcast, the only daily podcast dedicated just to drummers. Go to my website at danielhadaway.com. Hey there, welcome back to another exciting, amusing, fascinating edition of Drummer Daily. You know what's tough about doing daily podcasts is what's something new that I can say every day. I got to figure out something new to say every time I greet you. And who knows, I've probably repeated the same thing 10 times already. I think we're at episode like 50 or so, I don't know, somewhere around there. I've probably said the same thing 10 times already, who knows. Anyway, we're not talking about intros today. We're talking about playing with a click track, and we're back for kind of principle number 2 of playing, or how I got really solid at playing with a click track in just a couple of weeks and aced an audition and got a dream gig. And this process, by the way, I didn't mention this yesterday, but this process is something that I followed, and I've done it multiple times, and I've helped other drummers do as well. And so it didn't just work for me. I found that it pretty much works for everybody. And so if you think this doesn't apply to you and you haven't tried it, give it a shot, because I think it'll work for you. All right, so principle number 2 that I followed to get really great with a click track in just a couple of weeks. So yesterday we talked about getting an outside source for rhythm and patterns, because it can be boring and time consuming and not really beneficial to make up your own beats or patterns all the time. All right, so the second thing that I did was this. I break out, when I do a practice session, I break it out into small chunks, like 4 to 5 minutes, maybe 6 minutes each at most. And the reason why I do that is, by default, if you're playing a song, that's about how long a song is going to be. So you have naturally we have an attention span that's about that long. But what I found is that the way that I got better, kind of the patterns that I was playing simple, maybe 1 bar, 2 bar, phrases, patterns as practicing with a click track. And so once you get to the 4, 5, or 6 minute mark at playing a pattern over and over again, 2 things can happen. One, the very surface thing, is you might get bored playing that pattern. For me, kind of going along with, I don't get bored playing simple patterns, but I know a lot of people do. But I found I mentioned this a couple of days ago in the podcast, I find so much nuance and room to improve my accuracy inside of a beat, a very simple pattern even, that for me, honestly, I can't focus at that level of intensity for more than maybe 6 minutes at a time anyway. So it's either going to get boring for you if you're not diving in that deep, or it's going to get exhausting if you are. That's one reason. The other reason is, honestly, if you are focused and you are trying to improve how you're playing with a click track, at around the 4 or 5 minute mark, you've probably moved and improved where you're landing about as much as you can without it just getting repetitive. You basically have diminishing returns after a certain point of playing a pattern. You're not going to get a lot more improvement in that session with that pattern at that tempo after that amount of time. And what we don't want to do is we don't want to develop muscle memory for playing at a specific tempo. This is something else I mentioned. There's a video series that I'm gonna direct you to, or give you the link to at the end of this podcast series, where I explain more about this. But what would happen is I had discovered that when I was trying to play with the click track, a lot of times what would happen is I would practice a song that had been recorded with the click track, play along with it, and then I'd get to the gig at the church or whatever, and they'd speed up the song by a couple of beats or slow it down or whatever, and it would feel as awful as if I'd never practiced the song. And what I discovered is that I was developing muscle memory for a certain tempo. I wasn't actually getting good with the click track. My muscles were just feeling they knew, my body knew the feeling of playing at a certain tempo and could reenact that at will. But the second you changed the tempo a little bit, all of a sudden I couldn't handle it anymore. And so we actually don't want to go too long on any exercise, because it will you'll develop that muscle memory that we don't want. So by breaking out a practice session into small chunks where you do 4, 5, 6 minutes on a pattern at a certain tempo, and then you stop and you change the tempo maybe, or you change the pattern or something else, you can get the improvement that you need in a very efficient way. And also you don't get bored and you don't get exhausted. So that's kind of principle number 2 that I followed. So I got an outside source for rhythm, and then when I did choose to practice, and I would practice for longer periods of time, but I wouldn't play the same thing for like 45 minutes or anything. I would do it for 4 or 5 minutes, and then change that pattern, change something up, so that I could stay sharp and keep getting that improvement. Now, I would maybe come back the next day and play that same exercise again at a different tempo, but I wouldn't do the same thing all day for practice. And I might even do like a 30-minute practice session where I do 5 or 6 of these little chunks. I might do one of those early in the day, or, if you're getting home from work, maybe when you first get home from work, and then another one, before it gets too late, where you don't wake the neighbors. So you end up getting an hour of practice, but you split it up into 2. Incidentally, I used to, this is kind of funny, and this is going to sound really weird. If you know me at all, I'm definitely not a fitness buff at all. In fact, when I was in high school, my friends and I, we'd go to, there was a church nearby that had a gym. We'd go after school to the gym to work out as part of our senior project. One of those crazy high school things we had, where like instead of the last period of class, you got to go do whatever you wanted. That was kind of a project you worked on all year. And our project was exercising. But I spent most of the time exercising. I spent most of that actually playing ping pong with my friends. And so that tells you how much of a shows you how much of a table tennis guy I am, but it shows you how much of a fitness guy I am not. But I will say this, there was a time when I had a goal, and this is going to sound crazy, and people didn't believe me when I told them, but I had a goal of doing 1,000 sit-ups a day. People were like, well, that's impossible. And I was like, you know what? It might sound impossible, but it's really not. And here's what I would do. I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was something like what I would do is I would do sit-ups 4 times a day. So I would have 4 sessions of doing sit-ups. So in each of those sessions, my goal was to do 250 sit-ups. So so basically already I've broken down the 1,000 into 4 smaller manageable chunks. So I had 4 sessions of 250, and then I would break down that 250 into 5 sessions of 50 sit-ups. Now I could do 50 sit-ups. I wasn't unfit. I wasn't athletic either, but I could do 50 sit-ups. And so I would do 50, and then I'd stop, take a couple of minutes break, do 50 more. I'd do that until I did 5 sets of those. That would be 250 sit-ups. And then I would just do that 4 times a day. Now this was in the summer where I didn't have school or anything else, but I think I did it a little bit during school too. I just start, I might do 1 set of those or 1 session before school, and then I do the other 3 after school. Anyway, it's very possible to do really big, great, huge sounding goals and achieve them every day if you can break it up into chunks. My point in that is that for someone like me to say I did 1,000 sit-ups a day, that just seems ridiculous. But I found a way to make it work by splitting it up into chunks. So my question to you is, how much practice could you put into the drums or put into getting better at the click track if you were to split up your practice sessions into smaller chunks like that? You might be able to do, go from 30 minutes to an hour, 30 minutes to 2 hours, or 2 hours to 4 hours if maybe it's the summertime and you're in college or high school and you don't have anything else going on. But how much time could you dedicate to getting better at the drums if you were to split it into chunks? So think about that today. And then I'll be back tomorrow with another tip for getting really awesome with the click track. And now I will say tomorrow is going to be probably the big secret to all this, the big kicker. that I discovered that really helped me, kind of turbocharge my results at getting better with the click track. So I really want you to tune in tomorrow. But until then, go and try to see if maybe you can think of ways to break your practice up into little chunks and see if you can find a way to get more out of your practice sessions than you are now. And if you're not practicing, go practice, even if it's for 5 minutes. You can do that. It's easy. 5 minutes. All right. See you tomorrow. Bye.